My 6-year-old son came home from school excited about his art project, a drawing of his best friend's family. He'd drawn 4 people, including a woman with long, dark hair. "That's Chloe's mommy," Nico said proudly. Then he added in a whisper, "But it's a secret. Chloe said we can't talk about her mommy at home." My heart sank. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you love emotional and heartwarming stories, please subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Now, let me take you back to the afternoon that revealed a heartbreaking secret. Mom, look what I made! Nico bursts through the front door of our house, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders, his face lit up with the particular excitement that only first graders can achieve over a school art project. I was in the kitchen starting dinner, but I immediately wiped my hands and crouched down to his level. "Show me, honey. What did you make?" He pulled a large piece of construction paper from his folder, handling it carefully to avoid crumpling the edges. "It's for our family portrait project. Mrs. Hill said we could draw our own family or a friend's family. I already drew ours last week, remember? So today, I drew Chloe's family." Chloe White was Nico's best friend, a bright, quiet girl who'd been in his class since kindergarten. They were inseparable at school, sharing snacks, playing together at recess, always choosing each other as partners for activities. It was one of those sweet, innocent friendships that made my heart happy every time I saw them together. I looked at the drawing Nico had made, expecting to see the typical first-grade artwork, stick figures with triangle dresses and scribbly hair. What I saw was actually quite detailed for a 6-year-old's work. 4 people standing in front of a house. On the left was a tall figure with short brown hair labeled Daddy. Next to him was a smaller figure with curly blonde hair and a pink dress. On Chloe's other side was an even smaller figure labeled Grandma. And on the right side of the drawing, slightly separated from the others, but clearly part of the family group, was a 4th figure. A woman with long, dark hair flowing past her shoulders, wearing a blue dress with a large smile on her face. The label above her head read, "Mommy." I knew that Chloe's mother, Sarah, had died in a car accident when Chloe was only 18 months old. It wasn't unusual for a child to include a deceased parent in a family drawing. In fact, it would be completely natural and healthy. What made my heart skip wasn't the inclusion of Sarah in the picture. It was what Nico said next. "I worked really hard on this one," he said proudly. "Chloe told me exactly what her mommy looked like. She has long dark hair and a really pretty smile, and she's always happy." He paused, then leaned in closer and lowered his voice to a whisper. "But Mom, Chloe said it's a secret. She said I can't tell her daddy that she talks about her mommy because it makes him too sad. So we only talk about her mommy at school, okay?" The kitchen suddenly felt too cold. "What do you mean it's a secret, honey?" "Chloe says her mommy is in heaven, and she loves her mommy so much. But her daddy gets really sad when people talk about her mommy. So at home, Chloe doesn't say anything about her. But at school, she tells me and the other kids lots of stories about her mommy. She says her grandma tells her the stories, but she has to keep them secret from her daddy." I sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs, my mind reeling. A 6-year-old child was actively hiding her feelings about her deceased mother to protect her father's emotional state. That wasn't healthy. That wasn't normal childhood grief. That was a little girl who'd learned that her natural need to remember and talk about her mother was somehow wrong, somehow hurtful, somehow forbidden. "Does Chloe seem sad when she talks about her mommy?" I asked carefully. Nico thought about it. Sometimes she cries a little bit, but then she says it's okay because her mommy is always with her in her heart, watching over her from heaven. She says her grandma told her that, but she says she can't tell her daddy that because he doesn't like to hear about heaven stuff." "Thank you for telling me, Nico. You did the right thing, and I think your drawing is beautiful." After Nico went to play, I stood in the kitchen staring at the drawing, feeling a growing sense of concern. I'd known James White for 2 years through school pickups and playdates. He was always polite, always appropriate, but he maintained a certain emotional distance. I'd been to his home several times, and I'd noticed something that had struck me at the time. There were absolutely no photographs of Sarah anywhere visible. Not in the living room, not in the hallway, not even in Chloe's bedroom. I'd assumed it was James's way of coping with grief. Some people can't bear to see constant reminders of what they've lost. But now I was seeing it differently. Had James not just removed the photos for his own sake, but made Sarah's memory essentially off limits in their home? I thought back over 2 years of knowing Chloe, and a disturbing pattern emerged. I'd never, not once, heard Chloe mention her mother. Not in casual conversation, not during playdates, not even when other children talked about their mothers. I'd always assumed Chloe was too young to remember Sarah, that the loss simply wasn't part of her conscious experience. But there had been a moment, about 6 months ago, that suddenly made more sense. We'd been driving home from school, and another child in the carpool had been excitedly talking about a Mother's Day project. I'd glanced in the rearview mirror and seen Chloe's face shut down, her expression becoming carefully neutral. When I gently asked if she was okay, she'd changed the subject so quickly and smoothly that I'd been impressed by the social grace of such a young child. Now I realized it wasn't social grace, it was a practiced defense mechanism. A 6-year-old had learned to hide her emotions, to suppress her grief, to pretend her mother didn't exist, all to protect her father from pain. My husband Tom came into the house to find me still troubled, the drawing on the kitchen table between us. "Hey honey, I had to answer a work call at the car, but Nico couldn't wait to show you his drawing. What's wrong?" he asked. I explained everything Nico had said about Chloe keeping her mother a secret. Tom's expression grew increasingly concerned as I talked. "That's not healthy," he said when I finished. "A child that young shouldn't be managing her parents' emotional state. She should be free to grieve openly." "I know, but what can we do? Do we talk to James? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm misunderstanding the situation?" "What if you're right and you say nothing?" Tom countered. "Betty, if someone knew that Nico was suppressing his feelings about something important because he thought it would hurt us, wouldn't you want them to tell us?" He was right. This wasn't about being uncomfortable or overstepping boundaries. This was about a child's emotional well-being. "Okay," I said. "I'll talk to James. Tomorrow at pickup." That night, I did something I'd never done before. I researched childhood grief. What I found made my concern deepen. Child psychologists were unanimous. Children need to process grief openly, need to talk about deceased loved ones, need permission to feel sad, angry, confused. When children are taught that grief is something to hide, something that hurts others, something shameful, it can lead to serious emotional problems later in life. Suppressed grief doesn't go away. It goes underground, where it festers and grows, and eventually emerges in destructive ways. The next afternoon, I arrived at school pickup 15 minutes early. James pulled up at 2:35, as punctual as always. I walked over to his car before he could get out. "James, could I talk to you for a minute? It's about Chloe and Nico." His expression immediately shifted to concern. "Is everything okay? Did something happen?" "Could we step over there for a moment?" I gestured to a quiet area away from the carpool line. James followed me, his posture tense with worry. I pulled out the drawing. Nico had a school project yesterday, drawing family portraits. He decided to draw Chloe's family, and this is what he drew. James looked at the drawing, and I watched his face carefully. He stared at it for a long moment, his jaw tightening. "It's a nice drawing," he said, finally, his voice carefully neutral. "James, Nico told me something that concerns me. He said that Chloe talks about her mother at school, tells stories, shares memories she's heard from your mother. But he said Chloe told him it's a secret, that she can't talk about her mommy at home because it makes you too sad. The color drained from his face. He said that? Yes. James, is Chloe hiding her grief from you? Is she afraid to talk about Sarah at home? His jaw clenched. That's not. You don't understand the situation. Then help me understand. He was silent for a long moment, clearly struggling with how much to say. Finally he spoke, his voice tight with defensive emotion. When Sarah died, I was drowning. Every day felt impossible. Every reminder of her was like a knife. I had a daughter who needed me to be functional, to be present, to be a father. I couldn't fall apart every time I saw Sarah's face or heard her name. So you removed her from the house? I said, gently. I put away the photographs. I created an environment where I could survive, where I could get through each day without breaking down. And yes, I didn't encourage Chloe to dwell on her mother. She was so young when Sarah died. She has no real memories of her. I thought it would be easier if we just moved forward. But Chloe does think about her mother. She has feelings about her. She wants to talk about her, and she's learned that she can't do that at home, so she's doing it at school, in secret, while pretending at home that her mother doesn't exist. I'm protecting her, he said, his voice rising slightly. She's 6 years old. She doesn't need to be burdened with grief over someone she can't even remember. She doesn't need to see me fall apart every time someone mentions Sarah's name. I'm giving her a stable, functional home. You're teaching her that grief is shameful, I said, more firmly than I'd intended. You're teaching her that her feelings about her mother are a burden. You're making a 6-year-old child manage your emotional state instead of processing her own very normal, very natural feelings. His face flushed with anger. You have no right to judge how I parent my daughter. You have no idea what it's like to lose your spouse, to be left alone to raise a child who will never know her mother. I'm doing the best I can. I know you are, I said, softening my tone. I'm sorry, James. I'm not attacking you. I'm concerned about Chloe. A child her age shouldn't have to hide such a fundamental part of herself. She shouldn't have to keep secrets about her own feelings. That's a very heavy burden for a little girl to carry. She seems fine, he said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. Does she? Or does she seem careful? Does she ever talk about her mother at home? Ever ask questions? Ever seem sad about not having a mom? James was quiet. Because, according to Miko, she does all those things at school. She talks about Sarah constantly. She tells elaborate stories. She cries sometimes. She's processing her grief, just not at home, where she should feel safest to express her feelings. James took the drawing from me, his hands shaking slightly. What do you want me to do, Betty? Put photos back up and fall apart every time I look at them? Force Chloe to talk about a mother she doesn't remember until she's as miserable as I am? No. I want you to give Chloe permission to feel what she feels. I want you to let her know that it's okay to miss her mother, to be sad, to ask questions, to grieve. I want you to get help processing your own grief so that your daughter doesn't have to carry yours along with her own. I should go, James said stiffly. The bell's about to ring. He walked away, leaving me standing there feeling like I'd just made everything worse. But I couldn't shake the image of little Chloe, carefully monitoring her father's emotions, hiding a huge part of her inner life, pretending her mother didn't exist, all to protect a parent who was supposed to be protecting her. 3 days passed with no word from James. Nico reported that Chloe was at school and seemed normal, though he mentioned that she'd been extra quiet during recess. I started to worry that my conversation with James had somehow made things worse for Chloe. Then on Thursday evening, my phone rang. It was James. Betty? His voice was strained, exhausted. I need to talk to you. Could we meet tomorrow, without the kids? There's something I need to tell you. Of course. What time? There's a coffee shop on Main Street, the Roasted Bean. 10 o'clock? I'll be there. I spent the entire evening anxious, wondering what James wanted to say. Had I damaged their family dynamic with my interference? Had Chloe gotten in trouble for talking about her mother? Had James decided to cut off our friendship to protect his family from my meddling? The next morning, I arrived at the Roasted Bean to find James already there, looking like he hadn't slept in days. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually neat appearance was disheveled. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as I sat down. I owe you an apology." That wasn't what I had expected. "James, please, let me say this. After our conversation, I was angry. I thought you were judging me, interfering in something you didn't understand. But I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About Chloe hiding her feelings. About her treating her mother like a secret." He took a shaky breath. "I called Chloe's teacher yesterday. I asked her if Chloe ever talked about her mother at school. And, Betty, what she told me, she said Chloe talks about Sarah constantly, every day. She tells the other children elaborate stories about her mother, things my mother has told her, things she's imagined, things she feels she knows about Sarah. She describes her in detail. She talks about missing her. She even cries sometimes." Tears were running down his face now. Her teacher said she'd assumed I knew. She thought we were very open about Sarah at home, that we talked about her regularly. She had no idea that Chloe was living two completely separate emotional lives. One at school, where she could grieve, and one at home where she had to pretend her mother never existed. "Oh, James," I said softly. "I called a child psychologist yesterday afternoon. I explained the situation, and she said what you said, that Chloe is carrying an inappropriate burden for her age, that she's learned her grief is shameful, something that hurts people, something to hide, that this kind of suppression is incredibly damaging, especially for a child so young." He put his head in his hands. "I've been so focused on my own pain, on just surviving each day, that I never realized what I was doing to her. I thought I was protecting her from grief, but I was actually teaching her that loving her mother, missing her mother, was wrong. I was teaching her that her natural feelings were a burden." "You were trying to survive," I said. "You were doing the best you could with unbearable pain." "But my best wasn't good enough," he said. "My 6-year-old daughter has been managing my emotional state instead of processing her own feelings. She's been protecting me when I should have been protecting her." He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "The psychologist said Chloe needs to see me grieve openly. She needs to know that sadness about losing someone is normal and healthy. She needs to hear stories about her mother, see photographs, ask questions. She needs to know that Sarah was real, was loved, and that it's okay to miss her." "That's going to be hard for you," I said gently. "I know. The psychologist recommended I start therapy too. I've been avoiding my own grief for 4 years, and it's poisoned everything. I need to face it, process it, learn to live with it in a healthy way. Not just for Chloe's sake, but for mine too." He pulled out the drawing that Nico had made and carefully unfolded it. "Your son gave me a gift, Betty. He showed me what was happening right under my nose, something I was too blind to see. Chloe's been grieving all this time, just secret at school, where she thought it was safe. She's been carrying this enormous weight all alone." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "Everything I should have done 4 years ago. I'm going to put Sarah's photographs back up. I'm going to tell Chloe stories about her mother every single day. I'm going to make it clear that it's safe to talk about Sarah, to miss her, to be sad about losing her. I'm going to stop running from my grief and start teaching my daughter that grief is just love that has nowhere to go, and that it's okay to feel it." Over the next several weeks, I watched an extraordinary transformation in the White family. James started with the photographs. He called me one evening to ask if Nico could come for a play date, and when I arrived to drop him off, I immediately noticed the change. There, in the entryway, was a beautiful framed photograph of Sarah holding baby Chloe, both of them smiling radiantly at the camera. "Come in for a minute. I want you to see something." The living room had been transformed. Photographs of Sarah were tastefully displayed throughout the space, on the mantel, on side tables, on the walls. Not overwhelming, but present, acknowledged, honored. Chloe and I spent last weekend going through old photo albums together. She got to choose which photos she wanted to see every day. And Betty, it was like watching a dam break. She had so many questions, so many things she'd been wanting to say for so long. We talked for hours. Chloe appeared from the playroom, her face lighting up when she saw me. Nico's mommy! Come see all the pictures of my mommy! Daddy put them up and now I can see her all the time. The joy in her voice, the openness, the relief, it was profound. This wasn't the carefully controlled child I'd known for 2 years. This was a little girl who'd been set free. "They're beautiful, sweetheart," I said. "Your mommy was very pretty." "Pretty like you," Nico said. "She was really pretty," Chloe agreed. "And she was nice, and she liked to sing. Grandma says she used to sing to me when I was a baby. I don't remember, but I like to think about it. It makes me feel happy and sad at the same time." "That's okay," James said, crouching down beside his daughter. "It's okay to feel happy and sad together. That's what missing someone you love feels like." "I know, Daddy," Chloe said, hugging him. "You told me, and you said it's okay to cry sometimes when I miss her, and that you miss her too." "I do miss her," James said, his voice thick with emotion, but steady. "Every single day. And it's okay for both of us to miss her together." As the children played, James showed me more changes he'd made. He'd created a small memory corner in Chloe's bedroom, with photos of Sarah, a journal where Chloe could write or draw about her feelings, and a special box where she could keep mementos connected to her mother. "The therapist suggested it," James explained. "She said giving Chloe a physical space to honor her mother helps externalize her grief, makes it concrete rather than this scary hidden thing." He pulled out Nico's drawing, which he'd had professionally framed. "This is going above Chloe's bed," he said, "along with a photo of all 4 of us, me, Sarah, Chloe, and my mother, taken when Chloe was 6 months old. Chloe asked specifically for that. She wanted a picture that showed her whole family together. How are you doing? This can't be easy." "It's the hardest thing I've ever done," James admitted. "Every photo, every story, every conversation about Sarah breaks my heart all over again. But you know what? It's also healing. I've been running from this grief for 4 years, and all that running did was make it grow larger and more terrifying. Facing it, talking about it, letting myself feel it, it's painful, but it's also a relief." He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time since I'd known him. And seeing Chloe finally free to be herself, to talk about her mother without fear or shame, that makes every difficult moment worth it. Over the following months, the changes in Chloe were remarkable. She became more animated, more confident, more openly emotional. She talked about her mother easily and naturally, not as a forbidden secret, but as a simple, normal part of her life. "My mommy liked butterflies," she told Nico during a play date at our house. "Grandma said she used to have a butterfly garden, so Daddy and I are going to plant one in our yard this spring. It's going to have all her favorite flowers, and then the butterflies will come visit, and it'll be like Mommy is visiting too." James started joining the other parents for occasional coffee after school drop-off. At first, it was awkward. He'd been so distant for so long that people didn't quite know how to include him. But gradually, he found his place in the community. And when he felt comfortable, he started sharing stories about Sarah. "She had the worst sense of direction," he told a group of us one morning, laughing at the memory. "She could get lost in a parking lot. I once found her driving in circles in our own neighborhood because she'd turned one street too early and couldn't figure out how to get back. But she'd just laugh about it, make a joke. She had this incredible ability to find humor in everything. The stories weren't all sad. Many of them were funny, sweet, everyday moments that painted a picture of a real person who'd been loved and who'd loved her family deeply. And in sharing those stories, James was keeping Sarah alive not just for Chloe, but for himself, allowing himself to remember the joy along with the pain. One evening, about 2 months after that first difficult conversation, James called me. "I wanted to thank you again," he said, "and to tell you something Chloe said tonight that made me realize how important all of this has been." "What did she say?" "We were looking at photos before bed, which has become our routine, and she looked up at me and said, 'Daddy, I'm glad you're not scared of Mommy anymore.' I asked her what she meant, and she said, 'Before you were scared of Mommy because it made you too sad. But now you're not scared. Now we can both love her together.'" His voice broke with emotion. "Betty, for 4 years, I thought I was protecting Chloe from pain, but I was actually teaching her that love was something to fear, that connection was dangerous, that grief was shameful. She thought I was scared of her mother's memory. And in a way, I was. I was terrified of the pain that came with remembering." "And now?" I asked. "Now, I'm learning that you can hold both. The pain of loss and the joy of memory. That grief is just love with nowhere to go, and that it's okay to feel it. Chloe's teaching me that. She loves her mother so openly, so purely, without fear. She's showing me how to do the same." 6 months after Nico brought home that fateful drawing, I attended a Sunday barbecue at the White's house. James had created something beautiful in their backyard, a memorial garden for Sarah, flowering plants that attracted butterflies. Chloe had helped plant every flower, had chosen the colors, had designed the layout with her father's help. "This is where we can come to think about Mommy," Chloe explained to Nico, taking his hand and leading him through the garden. "Daddy says that even though she's in heaven, she's also here with us, in our hearts and in beautiful places like this." "That's nice," Nico said, with a simple acceptance of childhood. "Hey, look, a butterfly." They ran off chasing the butterfly, their laughter filling the garden, and I saw James smile, a genuine smile of peace and acceptance. "Thank you," he said to me quietly, "for caring enough about my daughter to risk upsetting me, for seeing what I couldn't see, for helping me understand that facing grief is better than running from it. Thank you for being brave enough to change, for doing the hard work of healing, for Chloe's sake and your own." "You know what's interesting?" James mused. "I thought removing Sarah from our lives would make the pain go away, but it didn't. It just made the pain silent and toxic, poisoning everything while I pretended it wasn't there. Bringing her back, talking about her openly, allowing the grief, it hurts, but it's a clean hurt, a healing hurt. Does that make sense?" "It makes perfect sense," I said. That evening, as I tucked Nico into bed, he looked at me with his serious 6-year-old expression. "Mom, I'm glad Mr. White isn't sad about Chloe's Mommy anymore."
"He's still sad, honey. He'll probably always be sad that she's gone. But now he can be sad and happy at the same time. Sad that she's not here, but happy remembering how much she loved them." "That's what Chloe said too. She said it's okay to cry about people you miss, because crying means you loved them a lot." Out of the mouths of babes, my 6-year-old son, through his innocent drawing, had revealed a truth that adults work hard to hide, that suppressing grief doesn't make it go away, and that children suffer when they're taught that their natural emotions are a burden. The drawing still hangs in Chloe's bedroom, right above her bed. It shows a family that's incomplete but not broken, a mother who's gone but not forgotten, a love that transcends death and lives on in the hearts of those left behind. And every time I see it, I'm reminded that sometimes children don't just need us to protect them. Sometimes they need us to give them permission to feel, to grieve, to remember, to love, even when that love comes with pain. Because the alternative, teaching them to hide their hearts, to suppress their feelings, to carry secrets that are too heavy for small shoulders, is far more damaging than any honest emotion could ever be. Chloe is thriving now. She talks about her mother openly and often, with a mixture of sadness and joy that's perfectly healthy and age-appropriate. She knows her mother through stories and photographs, through a garden full of butterflies, through her father's increasingly open grief that gives her permission to feel her own. And Nico's drawing remains a testament to the power of childhood honesty, of friendship, of one little boy who listened to his friend's stories and drew what he heard, making visible a love that had been forced into hiding, giving voice to a grief that had been silenced, and ultimately helping to heal a family that had been broken by well-intentioned but deeply harmful suppression. What did you think of the way Chloe protected her father by hiding her grief, and how confronting that truth helped both of them heal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about childhood resilience, the importance of honest grieving, and the ways we sometimes hurt those we're trying to protect touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more meaningful stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our next thought-provoking tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.